Hello, we are live from Bango HQ. I'm Ben, your host of the Bytesize series from Bango, and we have got a great show in store today. So I'm going to be joined by two external guests, Alan Wolk and John Giegengack, as well as Giles Tung, who's a familiar face here on the Bango Bytesize. So let's get them in. Let's get them to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit about themselves and what they look after. Giles, you first. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Ben. Thanks for bringing us in like that. I'm very excited to be here today with our two esteemed guests. So let me just quickly overview who I am. I'm Giles. I'm VP of Marketing here at Bango. I look at all things subscription bundling, and we're often talking about how we're helping the world's leading content providers and resellers, particularly telcos, banks, retailers, to subscription bundle. And we do that through our digital vending machine product. So very excited to see how we get on today and discuss all the predictions for 2026.
Thank you very much. Cheers, Giles. And then Alan, welcome to the show. Nice to have you on here.
Oh, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I am Alan Wolk. I am the co-founder and lead analyst at TVREV. We are, as the name might imply, a media analyst firm that looks after the television and greater media industries. We have a website. We've got 5 newsletters a week. We do special reports, webinars, and all sorts of good stuff like that. So check it out at tvrev.com.
Thank you very much, Alan. Welcome to the show. And then finally, but not last, is John. Welcome to the show, John.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Yeah, all good.
I'm John Giegengack. I'm the founder and the principal analyst here at Hub Entertainment Research. We're a consumer research company. We do about 150,000 consumer surveys each year on how people find and choose and consume entertainment, including lately a lot of research on the bundling of different services.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the introduction. So yes, we are going to be talking about the 2026 predictions in the subscriptions and bundling space. So 2026 it has been a year and will be a year of bundling, and it seems to be getting this momentum that we're seeing throughout. It's now, not anymore just a tactic, a short-term tactic. It's become integral and a real part of the growth playbook. So we're going to start with a lightning round. So I've asked the guests in advance to think of 1 or 2 predictions that are going to come up in 2026. We're going to cover those themes, so you can have a little time to talk about them and why you brought them here. And then we're going to have a little bit of chat around those different predictions, some questions that come from that. And then we've got 2 of the key themes which we've had discussions about, which is co-opetition and unexpected bundles, and also the emergence of AI in this space. So we've got a lot to cover. I'm very excited to get this going. So let's start with you, Alan. So you spoke a lot about feudal media dynamics and audience fragmentation. Can you first explain that quickly? And then what this actually means for distribution and bundling in the indirect channel?
Sure. So feudal media is where we are now. If you think of the monoculture, that period where everybody watched the same thing at the same time, sort of pre-internet, pre-streaming, it's a lot like ancient Rome, right? Everything was standardized. Everybody spoke Latin. There were, the cities looked the same. The system of roads, and now we're in this and there were gatekeepers who kind of kept control. That all went away, and now we're in this weird ecosystem where there's all these little bubbles around, across multiple platforms, not just streaming and linear, but TikTok and YouTube and Substack and Spotify. And they don't really communicate with each other. They all have their own sort of heroes, their own stars, their own lingo, their own brands that they identify with. But there's very little interaction, which is very similar to sort of feudal Europe, where it just sort of devolved into these little kingdoms, fiefdoms that didn't really interact with each other. And so that means that in order to sort of get audiences together, we're going to have to sort of find bundles that have something to do with each other, find bubbles, that have something to do with each other, and try and bundle them and try and create some sort of synergy between all of these diverse communities.
So you think bundles are going to play a part of that, kind of fixing this current fragmentation in the market then?
At some level, yeah. I mean, I think it's bigger than that, but I think bundles can certainly help.
Awesome. And then just a question around, maybe like Netflix and Prime and then other SVODs in this space, that you can see them kind of going broader as well than their TV or film. They're getting into sport, for example. Do you think that is having an impact on this sort of area?
Well, sport is interesting because sport sort of operates outside. It's the only area that operates outside of these sort of bubbles. So sport hits everybody. It's live. It's really the only place that you get a whole lot of people, especially for bigger sporting events, a whole lot of people live, all watching the same thing at the same time. And it sort of cuts across bubbles, at least for now. As smaller sports come onto TV, and as Zoomers sort of lose the patience to watch an entire match, you suddenly have, there's a real possibility that, that too will sort of, divert into various bubbles.
Giles, John, any comments you think on this prediction?
I think he's. Were you saying Giles or John? Sorry.
Go on, Tom.
You go first.
I think he's dead on, and in fact, I love Alan's analogy. Feudal media, I think, is a perfect description of where we are today, where this monoculture, which is what a lot of the profitability that was driving the old days of television. Now consumers are in charge, and they can kind of put together their own bundles of entertainment, either services or just different bundles they create themselves, different kinds of platforms, different kinds of content, and they no longer have to compromise based on what the media companies are willing to offer them. No matter how particular a person is, they can go out and find exactly what they want, and I think that is both the thing that's causing the traditional entertainment industry so much pain today, but it's also the big opportunity for companies that can learn how to negotiate that and even leverage it to be successful in the future.
Yeah, I'd add one thought to this is we're seeing some legislation come into play in various areas of the world. In Australia, we have the under 16 social media ban that's being discussed in the UK and also France. And at the same time, we have this move from some of the big SVOD players to move into sort of vertical media and short form media. And it's interesting to see how those two things might, one ban could present an opportunity to some of the kids who want the sort of short form media now pick up the SVODs instead for that kind of, quick entertainment. And it's interesting to see how that plays. And as Alan was saying, there could be opportunities here for bundles that cross over into this kind of lifestyle area for particularly the younger audiences, the ones that are so hard to reach.
Thank you, Giles, for those comments there, and thank you, Alan, for that prediction. I think we'll move on to John now. What have you brought to this discussion?
Yeah, well, I came up with two predictions, and one of them both of them go very much along with what Alan said. But I think that we are going to see, moving forward, kind of an expansion of the idea of bundles that goes beyond television and maybe even beyond entertainment. So when we think about, the subscription overload, this idea that people have more subscriptions than they can easily use, which is shown up in our research, it's shown up in the research that you guys have done. But one of the, we tend to sort of think about that subscription overload as being all about streaming TV, and that's probably the epicenter. But because people get so many different things via subscription now, that's really, it's certainly not limited to that. And one of the things that we do in our study twice a year that's on bundling is we give people the opportunity to build their own bundle. So we show them a whole bunch, usually about 20 plus different things, but they include streaming platforms. They include, here's the results right here. Everything from sort of the triple play, like home internet, a mobile phone plan, a network bundle with live TV, streaming platforms. The most recent wave, we included Paramount Plus and Disney and Peacock. And then we also expanded a little bit to include things, other entertainment stuff like gaming subscriptions, but then we even look at things that don't have anything to do with entertainment at all. And so one of the most interesting things that we found in our last study is that there were, out of the three sort of non-entertainment related, non-content things that we tested, grocery discounts and delivery, cloud storage, and identity theft protection, about a fifth of people, when we asked them to build a bundle of 5, we said, you can pick any 5 of these, but only 5. Which ones do you want? About a fifth of people chose cloud storage and identity theft protection, and 28% chose some kind of grocery delivery. And if you look, you can see that more people chose grocery delivery as part of their bundle than chose Paramount Plus or chose Peacock, or even that chose the Disney bundle. And I think this is a really, really important learning, because it shows that, I think that so far, a lot of the bundles that have been built are sort of hemmed in by, the paradigm of what these aggregator companies typically offer. And so they seem intuitive to us in the industry, but if you broaden the perspective and go out to consumers, there are lots of things that fit in well with a bundle that are not the things that we would sort of assume they would want. In fact, after we did this research, Peacock bundled themselves, I think, with Instacart, and from what I've heard from them, that's been pretty successful. But as soon as you can start to build these more distinctive bundles, there's a lot of stuff that becomes possible, and it also lets you create a bundle that's different from all the other bundles that might only be streaming platforms. And with so many offerings out there in the marketplace, differentiation is more than half the battle. My other
a question to that one as well.
Yeah,
if you look at kind of from your study as well, the younger generation, the younger demographic, do you see any kind of over-indexing or under-indexing comparison to the kind of the norm or the global average?
Absolutely. Yeah, so we built just as a straw man, we tested out kind of this isn't something that exists, but kind of a bundle built specifically for gamers and even a little bit more specifically targeted at young men, because those are the heaviest gamers, or at least the heaviest console and PC gamers. And when we looked at what people in that demographic chose for their bundle of 5 services, a gaming subscription, so like a PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live, was one of the top things that they chose, higher than streaming services, higher even than cable TV. And so we, showed this to our clients and said, the young men who play games is not the majority of the market, but it's not an unsubstantial number either. And if you can find these pockets of people that exist who have really specialized interests that nobody yet has tried to build something to serve them, and you come out with a bundle that has the content they care about, maybe you take your high-speed internet, and instead of just calling it high-speed internet, you call it internet maximized for gaming, and give it kind of a cool name. There are a lot of people who will respond to that, just because it's in line with their interest, but also because nobody else is offering anything like that. And so I think that that's a huge opportunity that a lot of these aggregators, meaning the cable companies or Amazon or Google or Apple, have sort of been dipping their toes in the water. But I think we're going to start to see more of that as we move through 2026.
Giles, any comments from your side on these kind of this data that's just been shown?
Yeah, our data shows all the same kind of territory. So when you look at age groups, there's a very distinct difference between what people are already subscribing to. So if we have a typical list of what subscriptions people are taking, typically it's SVOD at the top. It's got retail and gaming in there, sort of second, third in different orders. But as you switch through the age groups, you'll suddenly see that the older generation only have a very narrower set of subscriptions, which could include SVOD and news, for example, whereas the younger age groups, much less on the SVOD, but more on the gaming. And I don't want to spoil our thunder for later, but dare I say AI already. Some gong's gone off somewhere when I mentioned So,
I think.
So yeah, we see similar kind of trends, and we see that around the world as well. But yeah, so far, most of the typical resellers that we see, the mobile operators, pay TV, ISP, have gravitated towards SVOD. But clearly, as John just articulated, there is a big opportunity there to focus on particular user groups who have a very different set of subscriptions that they'd be interested in bundling.
Yeah.
Alan, any comments from you, Alan?
Yeah. I mean, there's all sorts of bundling opportunities. Like, I know that there are some people now discussing even bundling countries like Venezuela, the United States, Canada, and Greenland, and calling it like the MAGA bundle. And so you can do all sorts of things like that. But I think that anything that people subscribe to, and they think they can save money on it over on a monthly thing, and then that's going to be appealing. And we saw that years ago. It's funny. I think Hulu and Spotify had done a deal. John, help me, was it like 5 or 6 years ago at least? And I thought more of that would start happening because it seemed to be fairly successful. And I do still believe that we're going to start seeing more of that. Just people like saving. People like saving money. People like paying one bill for all of their stuff. So I don't think that that's going to go away. I think we're going to see more of it. So.
Awesome. I think we'll come on to a bit more of this as we go through the session as well. But John, you had one more prediction. We try and get through this one, and then we'll move on to Giles.
Yeah, I think like in my mind, the biggest thing that happened last year happened right at the end, which is when Disney made this partnership with OpenAI that will allow Sora users to make video that includes, I think it's like 200, 250 Disney characters. And it's that, this isn't a total. This doesn't mean that old school media and AI are now friends. Notably, Disney sent a cease and desist to Google the same day that they announced this partnership with OpenAI. But it does mean that they were able to get this agreement in place, with suitable guardrails they felt like to protect their content and their IP. And the reason I think this is so important is that the big Achilles heel that traditional media has is that that's kind of a passive type of content that you observe, and it's competing with these social media platforms, with gaming, which are things where the users can interact with the content, they can create their own, and that makes for a much more sticky experience. But the reason that Disney is doing this, they said, is the same reason that they made the partnership with Fortnite, which is that they can take all of their IP. And what Alan said a minute ago about these sort of bubbles of these pockets of interest, these pockets of ways that people consume content, those are all different, but you can have IP as a through line that goes through all of those, and people will follow the IP that they care about wherever it winds up. And that means that IP is, I think, the most important thing in this sort of post, in this feudal content ecosystem. And I think the opportunity for Disney and for other rights holders to take their IP and make it creative and also port it into all of those bubbles that Alan talked about, that's going to be a huge opportunity for them. And I think that AI may turn out to be a really, it's still as early in the early days as you could possibly make it. But my hunch is that could turn out to be, if executed well, a really effective way to take that IP and turn it into something living and growing and vibrant that's a lot more sticky than just trying to get 24-year-olds to sit down for 2 hours and watch it.
Yeah. We're going to talk about this a little bit more as well in the section, the shared topic on AI. Sorry, Alan, you were going to.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's what John was saying is really important, because one of the sort of downsides of feudal media is that, it's very hard, almost impossible to sort of get that sort of mega hit, that like ET phone home, where everybody knew what that was, or even mega stars. I mean, you have the occasional Timothy Chalamet, but like for music, like there's not going to be another Madonna. There's not going to be another person who you say, okay, even your grandmother knew who she was, even if she didn't really listen to her. And because of that, any kind of IP, like a Disney IP that you can sort of weave through different bubbles, is going to be very valuable.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot for that one, John. Really appreciate those two predictions. Giles, over to yourself.
Yeah, I've got 2.5 predictions here, really, to share. I mean, the first one is probably, of course, I'm going to say this, is the continued growth of the indirect channel. So what do I mean by the indirect channel? If once we would buy our subscription either from the App Store or from the website, the indirect channels are those where you're buying it from somewhere else. So an example, you go to sign up to a new mobile plan and you get Netflix included within it. That would be a bundle. That would be an indirect channel. They may also sell you other content. Now you're buying it. So different sort of flavors of bundling. A survey that we did back in March is showing that 2 out of 3 subscribers have at least one subscription which they got through one of these indirect channels. The average, in fact, is of 5.4 subscriptions, 2 have come through indirect channels, which is about 37%. And that goes quite nicely hand in hand with some data from Omdia, which I really like, which is that telco and non-telco bundling account for a third of 30% of all subscription video on demand sales around the world. So it's a kind of 2-sided street, or even a 3-sided street, where we have the resellers benefiting from selling and giving away either through acquisition or retention benefits, the subscribers benefiting from getting different deals and simplified access to subscriptions. And in some countries, it's still quite hard to pay for a subscription or a recurring payment. So doing so by adding it to your phone bill or whatever is quite a nice way of doing that. And then the content brands are obviously growing their reach through these kind of partnerships. So The indirect channel is going to continue to grow. We had some amazing case studies towards the end of the year and at the start of this year, the ESPN and Fox One bundle, which was, to me, is the new playbook. So we see Fox One launching from their own platform. They launched with Fox Nation as a kind of bundle there. They launched with ESPN as a kind of multi-party, multi-country bundle. And then ESPN are also selling that bundle. They launched through a whole bunch of channels and through mobile operators, Charter or Spectrum and Verizon. So that to me is the playbook, this kind of multi-channel launch. And we're going to see more of that HBO Max in Europe recently as well.
Charles, there was a question that's come in live talking about the indirect channel. Are they getting a commission? Is there a commission kind of structure involved through the indirect channel?
Yeah. So is who getting well, let me just explain how that typically works. So there'd be a relationship between the subscription brand and the company that's doing the reselling or the bundling, and there'll be some margin available for that. And they're typically marketing relationships on top of it. So, you know, how are you going to promote it, sell it, and so forth. That would be the typical structure of a bundled arrangement.
Hopefully that's answered your question. If there's any other questions that come up throughout, please do put them through. We are live, so we can try and address them as we go. You got another one to get onto?
Yeah. So this one's the sort of 2.5. I've actually got this in our 2026 predictions as two separate ones. So we have the situation where telco, which is the kind of home of bundling, the telcos, the ARPU is in decline, flat or decline in most markets. So they're under a huge amount of pressure. We then have the rise of MVNOs, which is mobile virtual network operators. So these are guys who are able to sell connectivity without actually owning the infrastructure. And there are rumors afoot that Mr. Beast, for example, is going to enter this space. Another MVNO that's already in markets, Red Bull Mobile, and of course, Mint Mobile from a few years ago, which was fronted by Ryan Reynolds. So we have these kind of virtual operators coming into the space, which is putting huge downward pressure on the whole ecosystem. So we're going to see more MVNOs and more celebrity brands coming into the space, which is really going to disrupt things quite a lot, I think, particularly in Europe and somewhat in America, as we can see here. So that's one theme. And then we have this other theme of bundle or be bundled. So as recently as I think it was November or perhaps around that time, Revolut in the UK launched a mobile plan, which was started at $12.50, and it's all you can eat data, and it includes travel. So if you are in the US and you're comparing that to the price you're paying for your mobile plan, your eyebrows will be going up at this point. But even in the UK, that's still an extraordinary deal. So it does raise the question, as a mobile operator, are you going to be the one diversifying and building your service? Are you going to move to the techco dream? They talk about telco to techco. And the image there is Telenet, which is one of our partners who have done this really well. They've launched a kind of marketplace where you can swipe on and off different subscription service. Really good at driving diversification and also driving retention. So are you going to do that? Or are you going to be happy to wholesale and let other companies like the fintechs sell your connectivity? So are you going to be the one offering the bundle, or are you going to be bundled? So those are two big trends that are emerging this year, and it's going to be fascinating to see who takes on the challenge and who doesn't.
Any comments, John, Alan, on some of these points that have been made from Giles?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, the other thing that's going on in the sort of MVNO and whatnot is it's been threatened for a while that you'll have 5G networks. In other words, that 5G to the home in the US, that all of the big telcos are starting that, and they're a threat to the land-based, you know, operators and MVPDs. So I think that's a whole other level that goes in there that kind of creates more disruption in the market, greater price pressure downwards, as well as the opportunity for using bundles or the possibility of having, you know, including different services into your monthly plan as a way to sort of get customers, a way to differentiate.
And I especially what Giles was saying about the indirect subscriptions, I think sometimes people don't realize the sheer scale of this. Antenna says that here in the US, and Antenna, the TV subscription data company, that something like 90% of niche streaming subscriptions, so the the little ones like the Brit boxes and stuff like that, come through some kind of an indirect subscription. And I think they said that 56% of them come from Amazon alone. And I think that's for those small companies, they're obviously giving up a lot of their subscription revenue in exchange to be, sold through these much bigger aggregators. But even so, for these companies, it's an absolute no-brainer because the scale, the number of potential subscribers you can get in front of, and the ability of those big platforms to find and target people who are going to be interested in that very narrow niche of content is beyond, they don't have anywhere near the resources that would be required to do that themselves. So I think that's an example of everybody wins. The aggregator wins, the small platform wins, and consumers win because they can marshal all the content that's on these very hyper specific services without having to maintain 8 different subscriptions on their own.
Right, and as someone who actually does that, the advantage for the consumer is that it's integrated into the Amazon interface. In other words, you don't realize that it's through BritBox or MHD or something else that you subscribe to. It's all in the same interface, so you wind up watching it more, which is good for everybody. And then you also forget that you have a subscription to it, so it's also good for the.
Yeah, that's Amazon's superpower is bringing all the content to one interface, which is not the case with every.
Exactly. Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Giles, for your couple of predictions there. We're going to move on to the shared topic now. So we're talking around co-opetition, mergers, and kind of these unexpected bundles that we're seeing come on live. In the last few months, there's been quite a few different examples, and even potential acquisitions. Obviously, the Netflix and HBO Max news that was released, we're still going through the motions, right? But questions arise. Why are they looking to do this? So, Giles, do you want to just kick us off with some thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think at the start of 2025, for those folk who like to issue some predictions, most people I think we're going to see some acquisitions and mergers this year. And probably it didn't really happen in the way that we were all anticipating, with the exception towards the end of the year of the news of the Netflix, HBO Max, and all of that side of things. So, but prior to that, though, we had seen an emergence of co-opetition, which is a kind of phrase that I'd like to use to describe this, where we see companies like the ones I already described, ESPN, which is Disney company, and Fox One, putting their products together in a bundle to create better value for customers. So I think where we didn't see the kind of mergers and acquisitions, we did see this emerging trend of co-opetition, and maybe the venue project, which didn't, the sports project, which didn't quite the market, was a nice example of how that could have solved a big consumer problem, which is the fragmentation and the subscription fatigue of particularly affecting sports fans, where you need 4, 5, 6 different services just to watch your sport and your team. So I think where we didn't see the mergers and acquisitions, and we don't really have signs of there being many more for 2026, what could happen is we'll see more of these sort of co-opetitions and multi-party bundles coming together, which are fairly easy to assemble and just require a bit of ambition from the contributing companies. And as we already discussed, it doesn't have to be SVOD with SVOD. It could be all sorts of interesting combinations.
Yeah.
Comments, Alan, John?
Yeah, so I think that. Oh, go on, John.
No, go ahead, Alan. You're gonna say. I'm probably just gonna regurgitate stuff I heard you say before anyway.
Yeah, so I think that we'll, whether it's in 2026 or the next couple of years, anybody who's not basically one of the big tech companies, anybody who's not Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft, is going to have to start merging together, because they're never going to get the scale that they need to go up against those companies. And those companies would gladly buy them were it not for regulatory bodies in the EU and US. So I think we're going to start seeing a lot more of that, people sort of coming together, whether it's co-opetition or just straight out buying each other. Because remember, too, that these companies all have global ambitions, right? And so they're not just content to be in North America and Europe. They want to be all over the world. They've all planted their flag all over the world. And in order to do that, they're really going to need to join forces to have the kind of financial weight to go into these markets. And then also to remember that outside of the US and North America and Europe, they're also bumping into Chinese companies who are also trying to do the same thing and have their own content and their own plays. So I think we'll start seeing a lot more bundling and not more mergers, excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see more. So I think it's still a big question mark if Netflix is the one that winds up getting Warner Brothers Discovery. But either way, we're going to see more banding together of these other companies. David Zaslav said, I think it was in 2023, either on an earnings call or at a conference or something, but he said, we, meaning everybody except for Netflix, we have to bundle together voluntarily before the bundling gets done to us. Yeah. And I think that even, I think that if Netflix does wind up owning Warner Brothers Discovery, that'll just pour more gas on that fire, because all of these independent, smaller, which is to say not the biggest one, they don't have the scale to compete. There's all this, you have to have a certain amount of new content to draw in new subscribers and keep subscribers. If you're a smaller platform, you don't have the scale, you don't have the number of users to defray the cost for that. So it becomes very quickly a much less profitable endeavor, if not a money-losing one, which a lot of the smaller streamers are discovering. If you take Netflix and you combine it with HBO Max, you've got number one combining with number four, which makes that scale problem even more pronounced. And I think then it becomes even more important for, at least in the streaming part of the market, for these companies to band together to have enough scale to survive, whether that's a merger or just some kind of a very intermingled bundle that goes beyond just having one bill to pay. Either way, right, they are going to be forced to do that, I think, to keep going.
Right, because one more quick point is, the issue if Netflix and Warner Brothers do wind up merging in the US, and I'm sure in the EU too, is what is the market? In other words, is it a monopoly play? It sort of is if you look at the market as just being streaming TV companies. But if the argument is no, the market is all media, if it's TikTok and YouTube and that broader anything that you watch on a screen, suddenly they have a very small piece of it.
Awesome. I think I'm happy to close on that co-opetition comment, or that kind of topic, and talk into a little bit more around about AI. Now, I know there's a lot of thoughts. I know in our pre-call we talked about this a little bit. There's a lot of contradictory thoughts in the market now of how it's going, and is there kind of some negativity coming from some sides and some saying the positive side? We'll kickstart with John. You've got some data from a recent report, right, that you wanted to share on this particular area, and then I'll pass over to Giles, we did a study back in November that we can bring into the table as well. So John, we'll start with you on that one.
Sure. Yeah. So we just finished our second annual study on AI and entertainment, and it looked at a whole bunch of things, everything from people's understanding and usage of AI for anything, but then also we looked at very specific use cases, some that exist today, some that are hypothetical, for AI and entertainment, to see what are the sorts of things that people are comfortable with. And we found, what we did is for each of these use cases, people answered two questions about them. So one was appeal. Would you want to watch or use this idea? And then the second one was, is this an ethical use of AI? Because it turns out that if people think something is ethical, even if they think the content is cool, they don't find the whole idea appealing. They don't want to use it. Mm-hmm. And we actually fielded this about 3 weeks before Disney and OpenAI made their announcement, but either through luck or extreme prescience, I should have maybe gone out and bought a lottery ticket that day. We actually asked people, would you be interested in another tier of Disney Plus where you could pay for that and you could then use AI to generate your own videos with Disney IP and characters and stories and worlds. And so among everybody in the whole sample, 44% said they were very interested. Another 24% said they were somewhat interested. But more than half of them said that they felt like this was an ethical use of AI. And it's really interesting because almost all of the other use cases that we asked about where new content would be generated, those were the least ethical uses of AI that people could come up with that we asked about. So things like having a virtual actor or having an influencer use AI to create a virtual avatar that interacts with their fans online. All of the things that we asked about that had to do with generating content, especially generating entire movies and TV shows with AI, those were the lowest appeal and the lowest ethics. But as soon as you put that generation power into the hands of the consumers, so they're the ones that are generating the content, not some big company, it flip-flops. The appeal skyrockets, and the number of people who think that that's an ethical use of AI is much higher as well. And so I think that this could sort of be a bundle, because the way that we asked the question was, imagine that this was like another tier of Disney Plus. From the earnings call that Disney gave the other day, it sounds like they are in some way expecting to integrate this content into Disney Plus. What that'll actually look like, who knows? But I think it lends more weight to that theory that I mentioned earlier, where letting people, instead of just having Hollywood content that exists on a pedestal, you observe it from afar. By design, you're not supposed to get close to it, making it something that's kind of living and interactive, and that you can even create your own content with those characters and stories that you love. That's something that would have been anathema to Hollywood just a short time ago. Understandably, they're also protective of their IP. But I think what this shows here is Disney kind of, not repeating the mistakes of the streaming area, where everybody tried to kind of hold streaming back and resist it. And until it was too late and Netflix had an insurmountable lead. This seems to me like Disney recognizing that this technology genie is out of the bottle and figuring out, what can we do to make it work for us, and how can we try to adopt it earlier and make it pay off better, as opposed to waiting and sort of the opportunity cost, the risk of doing nothing, which is what happened, giving Netflix such a big head start.
Thanks, John. And Giles, you had a slightly different, coming from this from a slightly different lens. Obviously, our study was looking at paying AI subscribers. Do you want to talk a little bit about that from your side?
Yeah, sure. And I'll come back to John's point there. So our kind of investigation into subscriptions as relates to AI goes back to Mobile World Congress last year, which is kind of this time last year. And we were getting a lot of questions from some of our partners saying, what AI subscription could you help us bundle with? And we started to look into the space and speak to more and more partners about that. And an investigation we did in the middle of the year across 21 countries around the world was to look at the position of ChatGPT. And it turned out to be the number 1 or number 2 highest grossing app in pretty much all of those countries, which was quite a revealing moment. Subsequent to that, we've heard that ChatGPT has something like 800 million weekly active users, which is kind of mind-blowing when you think of the scale of that. That is up there with the biggest mobile brands in the world. Although only 2.5% or 5%, depending on which source you take, only 5% of those are actually paying to use the service. Now that creates a very interesting dynamic, because it's very similar characteristics to SVOD, when SVOD, subscription video on demand, became the bundle of choice. So a very high value product that's in high demand, but it's got low penetration. Remember all the password sharing and all the rest of it from SVOD. We have the same characteristics here for AI. So it could be that AI becomes the next big subscription category for bundlers. And as you can see in our survey, this was as recent as November we did this. Nearly 5, this is of AI subscribers who are actually paying for at least one service. They're using 5 services. They're paying for 4 services. Remember earlier on, I told you the average of all subscription was 5.4. So these guys are absolutely deep into AI, using a lot of tools. 67% are saying it's their most important subscription, and 61% would rather cancel all their streaming than give up on their AI tools. So you can see the dynamics around this are really, really fascinating. So on the one hand, we have a prediction here which says that AI is going to become bigger than SVOD when it comes to subscription bundling this year. And then going back to the point that John was just making there, I have this phrase, deep bundle partnerships, which is one of those ones you throw out and hope it comes in. But what I'm anticipating is that where we see companies like OpenAI with their ChatGPT having the relationship with Disney, both of those companies have subscription products. Both of those companies could sell each other's products.
Yeah.
So are we going to see a situation where we have a kind of technology layer partnership, but then we also have a subscription bundle at the consumer level partnership? And I could see this also. 11 Labs, for example, they do a lot of voice-related AI and call center stuff. They're doing partnerships with companies like Deutsche Telekom. Why couldn't Deutsche Telekom also sell 11 Labs? I've even been using 11 Labs today. I'm a huge user of AI, and 11 Labs is a particularly good one. It has not just voice, it has video and all the rest of it in it. So I'm seeing a deep bundle partnership opportunity here as well. So I'm big into the AI, and I think as relates to subscription and bundling, I see a huge opportunity here. ChatGPT are trying to solve it with they have a free tier, they have a $8 tier now, which is kind of trying to bridge this gap. Then you're into a $20 tier, which is kind of the old premium. That's what I would use. And then they have like a super premium for business users. There is a huge opportunity right there for people who want to use AI, but they're restricted by usage caps. They're restricted by take Gemini, for example. You get to create 3 videos a day. That's not really enough. You know, that's not.
Are you
Plenty for me, you know, but hey.
I've seen your videos, Alan. So I think there is an opportunity here. Bundling could play a very significant role. It's a high demand product. Clearly, with 800 million weekly active users, everybody's using it. So yeah, those are my 2 predictions in this space. Alan, have you got something here on AI?
Yeah. Do you want me to comment on I mean, that's probably easiest to comment on or where you guys went. So with and because it's sort of related. So with what John was talking about with Disney, I found that kind of curious that they opened it up, because if you look at behavior on most platforms, only a small percentage of people actually create things, right? If you look at something like TikTok, I forgot the exact numbers, but it's something like 80% just watch and maybe 10-20% actually create stuff. So they could have licensed it to people who were actually going to use it, because I think most people will do 1 or 2 videos with it, with the character, and go, okay, did that, done, and that's that. And so I think, and in that vein, what you were talking about, Giles, is that you know, the problem with the subscription model on a lot of the AIs is it's not clear what you get for it, right? So it's because they've changed it all through. Like at one point, like there was a huge gap between ChatGPT 4.0 and 3.0, or I forget what the numbers were, but there was a big gap if you didn't pay, and then there wasn't. Yeah. And it's sort of like now, you know, it's like, and every so often I'm like, wait, why am I paying for this thing again? What am I actually getting? So they really haven't created a strong value proposition of why you're paying for any of these things. And I think that will have to come before they can really start sort of pushing the subscription price, because right now everybody's just playing with it and figuring, well, I'd probably get more if I pay, but it's not cheap. You know, it's $20 a month. So I think, yeah, they're limited in that. Now, our sort of take on the AI thing is that it's on a macro level, that's going to be very good for some things in the industry. Like, you know, it'll help tremendously with discovery and search, just because it can sort of do a better job. But it's also limited there, because the shows that really break, one of the things we talk about with feudal media is sort of the death of serendipity, that you don't sort of stumble on things anymore because you're in your bubbles. And the only way that things break through is often by human word of mouth. So we always use Game of Thrones as the example. If I came to you guys and said, hey, I have this idea, it's a series based on a bunch of books, popular with Dungeons and Dragons players, you know, cast of unknown European actors, $10 million an episode, you go, you're nuts. And then what algorithm would recommend it to people if we made it? And then even if it did recommend it, the people would probably be like, nah, yeah, it seems dumb. I don't want to watch it. And the way Game of Thrones took off was because of word of mouth. Somebody watched, you know, and not just one word of mouth, but multiple, and seeing articles. And there's a show in the US now, US and Canada, called Heated Rivalry, that's sort of in that same vein. It's become, you know, the New York Times has an article about it every other day pretty much. But it's a series about 2 closeted gay hockey players, a love story with explicit sex scenes that's oddly popular with heterosexual middle-aged women. It's written by and for them. But again, that became popular through word of mouth. If it showed up in your feed, if you were a hockey fan, or you just be like, nah, it's it's a YA kind of thing, not for me. So I think that's where AI has a limitation. I think the other place AI is very limited is any kind of advertising stuff that you're hearing about with agentic buying, because even though people intellectually know that, okay, this is very different than Gemini or ChatGPT, every time Chat sends you to a restaurant that closed 2 years ago, you're like, yeah, I'm not going to commit $2 million budget to this thing and just let it go. So there's that.
Alan, what do you think about like one thing I think that AI could be really good at is kind of joining together those bubbles that you talked about? Because one thing that we tested in our survey was an AI generated kind of hyper specific sports feed. So like I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. What if AI goes out and creates me a custom feed that has highlights from the game? It's got interviews with the players. It's got content from TikTok, from YouTube, and creates that all somehow in one personalized feed. Maybe with a AI generated commentator, but it's created just for me. It's pulling content I'm going to care about from all those bubbles, putting it in one place sort of more efficiently than I could do it manually on my own.
Oh, 100%. Thank you for that setup, because that's sort of like how we get out of this is AI is the new printing press, right? It's the thing in the way the printing press helps spread ideas into a world where it couldn't be spread before because nobody could read, or books. There were like 400 copies of the Canterbury Tales, and they cost the equivalent of millions of dollars. AI is going to help spread and create confluence between all the different bubbles. Is going to help do exactly what you said, John, is kind of create bridges and bring people together. It won't be the exact same thing we had before, but I do think that people want to connect with each other. They don't want to be isolated. I think that's a human need to sort of connect at a greater level. So I think that AI can certainly be a part of that in the way you described.
And I think just to add on to the agentic theme is, at some level, this takes us back to the bundle or be bundled. Who's going to own that customer? Who's going to be? Where do you go for that? You're going to type in, I want to watch Die Hard. I don't want to know where it is or how much I have to pay for it. I just want to watch it. And who's going to find that for you? But where do you go? Who's going to own that customer? Is it going to be ChatGPT? Is it going to be ChatGPT that's inside another one? Is it going to be the mobile operator? Is it going to be, so there's an interesting new battleground that will emerge, I think, on the back of this.
No.
Awesome. Well, I think we had a really good chat there, and I think every theme we've kind of explored, I think, have been really interesting, and I hope the audience, I can see from the comments that we're getting through, there's been a lot of activity and discussion happening, which is always great to see in these kind of live events. We're going to open it up now to a live Q&A session. So we've got a good 10 minutes or so to answer any questions that come through. So please do submit them into the chat, just a comment through on the LinkedIn event. There's a slight time delay in what comes through to us to what's live, but we can try and get them through as we go. So let me have a little look through as I can see here.
There's something from Rick Howe here about teasing John about the Eagles not making it to the Super Bowl. Is that a thing, John?
That's low, man. That's still too soon.
Right. So let me go right to the start. So there was a question about, are we really talking about packaging AI products or using AI to dynamically assemble price and personalized bundles? That's a question there from Ramiro Fernandez. Who wants to take that one? Is it for you, Giles, potentially? Or
yeah, maybe I'll just read it. Are we talking about packaging of AI products or using AI to dynamically assemble? Oh, look at that. That's clever. All, I think. So you go to GPT or ask, I want to watch this thing. It will find it for you. At some level, it may also look for your the best available price, or it will see what you're already connected to and who can offer, is your telco that you're connected to offering you a better bundle than somewhere else. So I think we're going to see all of that. They may even broker deals for you. There may even be an evolution in how we pay for things. So not just the monthly subscription, but there may be attention-based payments. So I think we're going to see a lot of variation here in pricing, personalization in particular. So AI for personalization. When you sign into your chat tool, it knows who you are, it knows things about you, it can remember your history if you allow it to. So the opportunity for personalization there is massive as well. And again, I think it comes back to this question of who's going to be the ones who take the time to create and curate that for you, that interface. I'll give you an example of the curation. If I go to Gemini now and I want to create a landscape image, I can't. I have to prompt the hell out of it. If I do that through another tool where it's got that templated, just landscape images, I can just do a landscape image instantly. That's a sort of modest kind of customization that I can set up in one tool but not another. So who's going to be the one that creates that kind of customization and personalization that allows you to then go and buy things and find things that are going to be of interest? So John could put in he's an Eagles fan, and up pops all the Eagles stuff.
We actually did a study on this as well, didn't we, Giles? We kind of spoke to a lot of our Bango colleagues just to really understand how many subscriptions they're actually signed up to watch their own team or their favorite tennis fan. And we did it in different countries as well, because we're a global company, so we could kind of see that kind of variance. And it's staggering, right? And the US are obviously the ones that suffer the hardest, I think, from the data. It's somewhere near upwards towards $200 a month paying to be able to see their, an NFL team, which is, it's astronomical. But then weirdly, if you're into NFL but you're based in the UK, you've got one service. You can watch it all in one place. And that's, that's a very interesting dynamic there. And I wonder how AI is going to play in that role of finding, like you just said, could you type in your team and find how to access those particular teams and watch your site. So thank you for that. Any comments from you, Alan, John, on this particular one?
I think. Go on, John. I
was just going to say, just on the sports thing, it's even more than just the complication of the streaming services, because in our sports study, among people that are under 25, about 60% of them say that they get most or all of their non-scripted their non-live sports content from social media. So the games they watch live, but everything else, they pull it in from TikTok, from YouTube, from Instagram. And it's not just games. It's not even just stuff that's put up by the leagues. It's all the stuff that's put up by the players, by influencers that are experts on a sport or on a team. So the amount of stuff that needs to be gathered together to kind of fill the appetite of the average sports fan today is an order of magnitude bigger than it was, even like 5 years ago.
Yeah, I was going to say that the other great thing with AI is that you can interact with it, right? You can ask it questions like, which of these feeds that you're showing me focuses on the defense more, put that up front. So it really lets you sort of customize an even greater level, or just find the stuff in a way that you couldn't just reading the descriptions that they provided.
You can make an image of yourself, Alan, doing the Saquon Barkley backwards hurdle. Just saying.
Also, we've got a question here from Thomas. Thank you again for submitting these questions. We'll try and get through them all, and if we can't, we'll follow up afterwards. So, how can the smaller tier 3 US operators participate without the scale like companies like Bango that are required to qualify for these programs? So, this is kind of looking at the smaller tiered operators. Is that a good question for you, Giles, to kind of take on?
Yeah, I mean, there is no limitation really as to who works with the digital vending machine. We have no limitations as such. I suppose there is a question as to how you will be able to attract the certain content providers if you are small in scale. So there's potentially an issue there. You need to have commercial terms. But I think, as far as digital vending machines concerned, which is our product for subscription bundling, there is no technical limitation or commercial limitation which would prevent us from working together. So let us talk after this.
Awesome. There's quite a lot of just comments and comments through here, which is really good to see. But you're trying to
should we do Rick's Disney question?
Yeah, let's get Rick's question up.
So Rick's question was, I want to know if the new Disney CEO will finally create real bundles of Disney Plus and Disney Parks.
Who wants to take this one?
I think it's telling that the person they chose is the person in charge of Disney experiences, which is the word that appears over and over again. If you read the press release, for instance, about the OpenAI partnership and the press release about the partnership with Fortnite, I think Disney is really recognizing the value to be had in making their IP accessible in as many ways as possible, and joining together those disparate, feudal bubbles that Alan was talking about, making Disney IP the through line that runs through all of those things. So if you're a Disney fan, if you like The Mandalorian, you know, you can interact with or watch or otherwise experience The Mandalorian everywhere, whether it's, you know, creating content or watching it or presumably going to the parks. So I think that's a pretty clear maybe suggestion of where their strategy is headed.
I could see that. I could see this kind of bundle definitely happening. We're tempted to think of Disney parks as in the bundle must include the front door ticket. It doesn't have to be that way. You could have some kind of Disney fan, a bit like what John was just describing there. Here's the Disney fan bundle, which includes access to Disney Plus. Of course it does. It probably includes the use of the ChatGPT characters and all of that in Sora. And then it might include Meet the Mandalorian at the Disney park. So you've got perks being included whilst you're visiting the Disney park. So it doesn't have to be as literal as Disney Plus and entry to the Disney parks. It could be Disney Plus and other fandom things, you know, come to our, you know, enter the park an hour early and meet such and such if you've bought a ticket, you know, or stay in the fan room in the hotel or whatever. These other sort of around the edges kind of benefits too.
Yeah, that's where I was thinking, Giles, that it would be less sort of a specific bundle than it's sort of a perk of different levels of Disney Plus subscription. In other words, like if you had a family, you know, platinum plan, whatever, it also threw in all this stuff that you could do in the parks.
Yeah, that would make sense to me. And I think, you know, Crunchyroll's another content brand which has really leaned into their fandom and the fan, you know, love for their brand. You know, people do love these brands and love the characters and love the IP. So where you have that, there is the potential to then build things around it. And I think a fan oriented bundle would make a lot of sense. Good question, Rick. Good to see you, by the way.
This is quite an interesting one that's just come through from Ramiro again. If you had to advise a mid-sized media or content company today, what is the one capability they must build in 2026 to stay relevant in this bundled world?
An adapter to the digital vending machine.
I think it's the whole thing, isn't it, about being bundle ready, right? I think there's a lot of, we see a lot of partners that come to this, they have this ambition, they want to be everywhere, want to go through all these different channels, but they need to really think about what their capabilities are in-house in their technical teams and what needs to be done.
Well, you know, what John already explained a lot of this, and I mentioned earlier, you know, the ability to reach multiple audiences through different channels is the secret weapon here, and the playbook's already written. We can already see how the largest companies are taking advantage of multi-channel launches, and that's how to reach the biggest audiences. The antenna data that John referenced earlier on is absolutely fascinating, and even in their sort of niche brands, they're including Crunchyroll, which has got something like 17 million customers. So it's not only the small ones, but some of those content brands are almost entirely through indirect channels now. So the whole pendulum has switched entirely to we're going to grow through partnerships rather than try and drag people to our website to, you know, download or whatever from there. So I think thinking about partnerships, growth through indirect channels, and of course using the digital vending machine to do so is probably the sensible strategy for 2026.
Yes. And in the same way that companies for years use SEO to make sure that they showed up on Google, there's a whole field now called GEO or GPT optimization. And that way you want to be searchable. You want to be the first thing that the GPTs pop up when they're searching for something in your category.
Absolutely. So thank you for that question, Ramiro. I hope that's answered your question. Another question has come up here from Farah, if I said your name correctly. So one more concern about bundles. The collaboration with Microsoft content generation is also changing. Players don't have consistent strategy. It looks like an AI competition and war not yet ready for bundles. Is there any comments for that one that's come on screen?
I agree. I mean, I think that my hunch is that in the future, consumer access to like these LLM tools will probably be free, the way that we don't have to pay to access Google today. And they're going to make a lot of their money from monetizing the back end or selling that kind of optimization to different companies or enterprise applications that they roll out to a giant organization at once. But one of the big concerns, even in the greater stock market right now, is that there's all these sort of competing LLMs in parallel that are all ramping up massive amounts of infrastructure. Where in our research, the usage of AI engines, climbed by 50% from last year to this year, but the number of people who are actually paying to use it stayed the same. So there's a lot more of this dabbling, and there's a lot less commitment to spend money on it. And I think part of that is what somebody mentioned a minute ago, that the different engines are all, as you talked about trying to make ChatGPT make Gemini make a landscape picture, but Gemini is better at other things. I think that we'll have to see some consolidation between all of these models into some smaller number that do everything well. And I agree that there's, one of the risks for Disney, and maybe why they only made a 3-year contract with OpenAI, is that nobody really knows what's going to happen, a year into the future, let alone 5 years into the future, of what the players are going to look like when the dust begins to settle.
Right. And they're all advertising is the other piece, right? So they have, Chad has already said, like, hey, we're going to roll out advertising. So, and I'm very curious to see how that works and how people react to it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I think we're coming to the end of the time here. Thank you. I must say thank you very much, Alan, John, for joining. Giles, great to see you again on the show. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure the audience has been firing up, which is great to see, and the engagement that we're having. Yes. For those who haven't seen these sort of sessions before, they're all available at the bango.com/podcasts section of the website. We've done a lot of different topics there, so do check that out. And also subscribe to all of our pages, right? So TVREV, Hub Entertainment, and also Bango subscriptions as well. There's a lot of interesting news and insights that you can find from all of our pages. But yeah, if you need anything that's related to subscription bundling, Bango is your place. And yes, we'll hopefully see you for future shows. Thanks a lot for joining, and we'll see you soon.
Guys. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.